The real reason for high gas prices isn't what you've been told. High gas prices are hitting everyone hard, and some states are even resorting to sending checks out to help offset the pain at the pump. But the real reason why is much different than what you've been told to believe. If you watch the news, you've heard by now, it's Putin's fault. It's because the war with Russia and Ukraine, right? Well, in this video, I'm gonna break down what the mainstream media won't show you. We're gonna take a look at the price of oil and gas before Biden, before Putin, and we're going to look at inflation from a completely different angle, and what we will see will be shocking. So let's go. All right, welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name is Mark Moss, and I make these videos to change the way you think about money because almost everything you've learned is wrong. Now, I say almost everything because if you've learned about finance from school, then it's probably wrong. And so we're trying to change that. Now, one of the best ways to learn is, of course, to watch videos like this, subscribe to financial newsletters, listen to podcasts, but the best way is to get out and meet people in real life, which is why I'm hosting the second annual Market Disruptors Live event. There's a link down below, marketdisruptorslive.com. I got 15 different speakers from different areas coming to tell you what they think is going to happen and what you should be doing about it. I'm talking like the #1 demand speaker right now, Luke Grauman, nailing this new transition to this new world monetary system. Danielle DiMartino Booth, a Fed insider, everybody's favorite macro addict, George Gammon. Obviously myself, we got Robert Breedlove, we have Lawrence Lepard, we have Greg Foss, the bond trader, everybody's favorite, and so many more. There's a link down below, marketdisruptorslive.com. Come meet some new friends, come meet me, meet the speakers, ask us questions, shake our hands, have dinner with us. There's an opportunity to have dinner with us, and so much more, marketdisruptorslive.com. And one more thing. In the comments below on this video, it gets filled up with spam. They look like they have my picture, but it's not me. You can clearly say because it doesn't have a check mark. My comments have a check mark on them. If it looks like it's my picture, doesn't have a check mark, it's not me. I am not a trader. I don't recommend that you trade, and I'm not into trading cryptocurrencies. I'll never ask you about that. I won't ask you to talk to me on WhatsApp or Telegram. I won't ask you to send me money on those platforms. If anybody does, it's a scammer. Beware. I can't warn you on every video. We do our best to clean those up. As a matter of fact, I have a full-time person, customer service person that just goes through and cleans comments and deletes people off the channel. It costs me a lot of money to do this. I'm trying to protect you, but if you follow me, I'm not a trader. I'm not trying to tell you to trade, and I'm not trying to tell you to trade cryptocurrencies. Don't send me money on Telegram or WhatsApp because it's not me. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, now back to inflation, Biden, etc. So if you've been to the local gas station recently, which I'm sure you have, then you have, of course, seen and you felt the impacts of the rising gas prices that have been all over the news. And it's big news because it's painful. Now, I drive a truck, and filling that thing up has doubled. And depending on where I get gas, it could be close to $200 per tank. In California and Los Angeles, some gas is over $7 per gallon, while nationally gas prices are much lower than California, but they're still at an all-time high, reaching over $4 per gallon. So there's absolutely no hiding the fact that fuel and energy prices are soaring, but it's just not for the reasons that we're being told. Now, the American people have been led to believe that the reason for the prices shooting higher is because of Vladimir Putin and, of course, his invasion of Ukraine. Biden's own press secretary, Jen Psaki, put it pretty straightforward in this recent interview.
You may have noticed this week that your gas prices have gone up. I want to talk to you a little bit about why. A lot of it has to do with Vladimir Putin.
Well, that's it. Since she said it, it must be true, right? I mean, never mind the fact that she's not an economist or an oil and gas expert. Now, of course, we've heard other similar things. We heard something similar on March 14th when President Biden stated, quote, "The current spike in gas prices is largely the fault of Vladimir Putin. It has nothing to do with the $1.9 trillion of American Rescue Plan that's only contributed 0.3% to the inflation figure." Well, what do you guys think? Do you really think that the $1.9 trillion spending bill only caused 0.3% of the total 7.9% inflation figure? I think the fact that inflation has become so bad and so obviously their fault that them having to admit this is actually a telling sign. But then good old Sleepy Joe came out and recently contradicted himself in this video clip.
Real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
There you have it, straight from Biden's mouth. He admits that the sanctions he is imposing is the real reason for the rising prices. And you just got to shut up and take it, right? And he says, you have to deal with it. Now, Biden also has the backing of the mainstream media, who appear to be very one-sided in their reporting of this inflation issue. Listen to hear who in the mainstream media are blaming for the inflation issue.
Who are the media blaming? We're crunching the numbers right now, Stuart, but I'll give you a flavor of what we're finding. Since the war began, we've looked at NBC so far, trying to see who they blame for skyrocketing gas. Since the war began, they've blamed the Russians 16 times, the pandemic 7 times, and Joe Biden once.
Well, there you have it. What a surprise. The Russians are blamed 16 times. COVID was blamed 9 times, and Biden only once. Now, let's dig into some actual data to see if this is in fact true. Let's go over to my favorite whiteboard and look at the price of gas and oil over the past 2 years, breaking down when Biden took office, when the invasion occurred, and then we're going to analyze whether it was in fact the Putin invasion of Ukraine that's caused the massive inflation we're living through, or if it might be something else. Let's go check out the whiteboard. All right, so we're back over to my favorite whiteboard over here. And let's take a look at a couple charts to look at some actual factual data, see what we're looking at here. So the first thing that we want to look at right here is the price of oil. Now they say this is all Putin's fault, it's all because of the Russia-Ukraine thing, but let's take a look at the price of oil. Now, of course, when the price of oil goes up, the price of gasoline goes up. So we can see that the price of oil had been kind of consistent here, staying in this range. And if we draw this across, we can kind of see where that range would be. Now, what we can see here is that in March of 2020, during the pandemic, the price of oil plummeted. Of course, demand for oil went through the floor. The price of oil went down to negative $35 there at the bottom. Of course, it started rebounding when the economy opened back up, and you can kind of see this. Now, what's important here is that the price of oil rebounded and had stayed pretty flat. And this line right here represents when Biden won the election. Now, we're looking at when he actually won the election in November, not when he took office in January. The reason why is because markets are what we call discounting mechanisms. What that means is that the market allows us to buy something at a discount, cheaper today than what we will believe it will be in the future. And so the markets are typically moving faster than what the economy is moving. So when Biden was elected, the prices already started moving. The reason why is because if Trump was elected, then it would have been a very strong pro-US energy policy that he would run on. But then they knew if Biden won, it was going to be shut down natural fossil fuels and move to green renewables. And so from the time he won, you can see the price of oil started to skyrocket higher right off the bat. And then it just kept going from there. And this whole green box all the way to this point is at the point when actually Putin and Russia invaded Ukraine at this point. So for Biden to say it's all his fault, well, the data doesn't show us that. As a fact, the data shows that from the day he was elected, the price of oil has continued to shoot higher, way higher, in fact, than the baseline that it was pre-pandemic. The other thing to take a look at is since the invasion, the price of oil did skyrocket really high. But again, the markets were trying to guess, trying to predict, front run where things were going to go. But we can see that oil's actually came all the way back down and is back to almost where it was pre-Russia invasion. So is high oil prices Putin's fault? Well, again, Biden and Jen Psaki want to tell us so, but the data doesn't support that. Now, high oil prices leads to high gas prices. Let's take a look at this. So gas prices here, we have 2014 till today over here. And what we can see for the last 8 years or so is that gas prices have been in this range of these red bars here. And so go up and down, up and down, up and down a little bit. We can see right here, March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, right, oil dropped to negative 35. So of course, gas dropped below that line for a little bit. But what's interesting is since then, we can see that the price of oil has just continued to shoot higher right about when Biden was elected president, and we can see that it's broken out of the range, and way up here in this red dot is where the Russian and Ukraine crisis started happening. So again, were high gas prices the result of Russia invading Ukraine? Well, again, Jen Psaki and Biden tell us so, but the facts, the data tell us something different. Now we knew this. This is not a surprise. As a matter of fact, I predicted when Biden took office that by the time he left office, gas would be $10 a gallon. Now, at that time, gas was about $2.30 a gallon. So to predict a $10 gasoline jump when it's never been that high was a pretty big call. But in California, we already seen $7.50 gas. We still got a couple more years of this guy. So I knew that because it was going to be his policies that he was going to put in place that was caused that. And as you can see, that's certainly the case. Now, let's look at a couple other things. He said that inflation is also Putin's fault because, supply chains breaking down and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's pretty interesting because what we can see, going back again to 2014, we can see that inflation had stayed pretty flat, below 2%. As a matter of fact, for like the last decade, the Fed has been saying they can't get enough inflation. They want 2%. They couldn't get that. You can see we've been below that. Right here, the red arrow is when Biden was elected in November 2020. And again, this was well before the Russia invasion of Ukraine. And inflation hit 8%. So was it the Russia-Ukraine? Well, again, the data doesn't support that. Now, I want to be fair to President Biden. Right? I want to be fair to him because it's not 100% his fault. Now, the first thing I want to show you, we'll dive in a second. This is from Shadow Stats. So the number of inflation that our government tells us, CPI, Consumer Price Index, or I call it CPI, is wrong. And so this is from Shadow Stats. So what the government shows us is this red line, CPI, showing us that inflation stays pretty flat at about 2% right here. Shadow Stats actually goes back and looks at inflation, how inflation was measured back in 1980 and 1990, because at those two times there was massive overhaul in the way they calculate that CPI. Now, if we go back and calculate the way they used to, back in the 80s and 90s, we can see that inflation is actually above 15%. That's the real inflation number. Just a little sidestep, but back to trying to be fair to Biden. It's not all his fault. So let's take a look at this chart. Now, if you watch this channel regularly, then you already know that inflation is not prices going up. Prices going up are the result of inflation. Inflation is when the money supply grows. Like a balloon, I inflate a balloon, I add volume to the air and the balloon grows. When I add volume to the money supply, that's inflation. Prices are the result of that. So we look, here's the money supply chart, and we can see the volume, like the air in a balloon, the volume of money going up. The money supply is increasing. It's been increasing pretty steadily. However, right here, was March of 2020 when the government started printing a lot of money. Now, to be fair to Biden, he wasn't president at that time. It was not his administration, which is why I want to be fair. Now, I'm not for left or right. I'm not for blue or red. I'm not for Biden or Trump or whatever you want to call it. Both presidents, every single president, both political parties print money. Trump spent more money than any president before him, and the President Obama spent more money before him, and Bush before him, and Biden's going to spend more than Trump. Every president spends more and more. It's not about partisan politics. Every president does this. So back to Biden, but his claims, that's what we're looking at. So we can see that the money supply started increasing long before Biden took office. Here we have the green box is when he won the election, remember again in November 2020. So inflation had shot higher, the money supply, I should say, shot higher, and it kind of started tapering off a little bit. And since he took office, it has only continued to take off. This is the cause of inflation, or this is inflation, the money supply increasing like that. And like I said, in all fairness, it's not all Biden's fault. However, it's certainly not Putin and Russia's fault. All right, now let's go back over and look at some more data. All right, well, there you have it. You can clearly see this trend of inflation and gas prices started long before the Russia and Ukraine war. And a lot of it was before Biden took office. But let's turn back to good old Sleepy Joe and look at the impact he's had directly on the U.S. energy sector. Now, from the very first day Biden took office, he began attacking the American oil and gas industry. He shut down the crucial Keystone Pipeline. That was one of the first actions that took office as soon as he came in, January 2021. He also went on to shut down all new oil and drilling leases on U.S. land and water, all in the name of fighting climate change, of course. But, I mean, if you're going to bankrupt the American people, it's got to be for at least a virtuous cause, I guess. But this is all part of a broader trend of the U.S. hamstringing itself in relation to its energy production because of our participation in global climate change agreements. And these policies have had a massive impact. In fact, all of the new attacks and regulations on the oil industry have led to the U.S. producing 10% less oil in 2021 than we did in 2019. And you know all about supply and demand, right? Elementary kids know about this. What do you think happens when you reduce the supply by 10% and the demand stays the same or actually increases? Oh yeah, the price goes up. But wait, it actually gets worse. Joe Biden's hand-selected nomination for the position of Comptroller of the Currency, the OCC, Saul Amarova, openly said she wanted oil and gas companies to go bankrupt. I know it's hard to believe, so let's hear it straight from her own mouth.
For certain troubled industries and firms that are in transitioning. And here what I'm thinking about is primarily coal industry and oil and gas industry. A lot of the smaller players in that industry are going to probably go bankrupt in short order. At least we want them to go bankrupt if we want to tackle climate change, right?
Now, no, you didn't hear her wrong. She literally said she wants oil and gas companies to go bankrupt. Now, you tell me, what oil company would invest more money into exploration, new technology, research and development, when you're being told by the lawmakers that, quote, we want to make you go bankrupt? Now, the U.S. was founded on the ideals of capitalism. And now our presidents are hand-selecting nominees for positions of power, and they are making crazy statements like this. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable, right? But it's no surprise that these policies that they're pushing have led to U.S. production of oil going down. Since 2020, it's been going down, which is, of course, making us more reliant on energy imports than we were before. Now, these policies are directly hurting the national security of the United States, making the U.S. reliant on countries like the Middle East, and yes, even Russia for energy. So wrapping all this together, yes, the recent invasion has obviously caused this price to rise. However, this is a much more nuanced conversation than what the Putin price hike talking heads are claiming. So the Russia situation isn't the cause, but rather it's accelerating an already existing trend. So what do our central planners have in store for us to fix the issue the U.S. is facing? Well, good old Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, he announced an $11 billion relief package, which includes a $9 billion tax refund, which will mean giving people $400 for every registered car they own to help with rising gas prices. Now imagine that. Our central bankers have caused massive levels of inflation by printing money, and they think the solution to the rising prices is to print more money? And look, it's not just the United States. The United States is not to be outdone. Of course, our neighbors in the north, Canada, they're trying to do something very similar. In Quebec, they announced a similar policy as California, announcing they're giving $500 to 6.4 million Quebec residents to fight inflation. Now, the politicians putting policies into place to shut down energy production is obviously bad for prices. As we can see, right, they're shooting higher everywhere. But it's even worse than that. We can see what's happened in other nations who have used these same policies to help us understand where this all could go. For example, Venezuela is one of the richest countries in terms of its oil reserves, but even with those massive oil reserves, it's still become a third world country due to President Chavez's replacing oil executives with his buddies. His buddies didn't know anything about oil. No, Venezuela has the most abundant oil reserves in the world, but the government is too incompetent to pull it out of the ground. Now, it doesn't matter how many resources you have if you don't allow capitalism to prosper in your country. Now, here's a relevant quote surrounding capitalism from a book I just wrote, which maybe you don't know I wrote a book. It's actually being launched right now. It's called the Uncommunist Manifesto. And let me give you a little excerpt from it. Capitalism is just the natural process of taking resources, time, energy, and matter, and turning them into something of higher order value. All systems of rule, order, and organization, even socialism and communism, have capitalism in them. The question is simply, to what degree is this natural process allowed to occur, and to what degree does politics and the short-sighted human desire to control everything get in the way? Now, by the way, you need to get this book. Go check out uncommunist.com to get the early launch specials. There's a link down below. We're in a launch phase right now. You can get all kinds of bonuses. Support me, support the book. Let's try to get these ideas out there. Uncommunist.com. There's a link down below. Now, back to Venezuela. As Venezuela discovered, if you implement socialism or cronyism by replacing competent people with, that have the right incentives with incompetent people, you can destroy your country's wealth. It'd be a great shame for the United States to shoot itself in the foot just like Venezuela did. Now, the solution to this energy problem the U.S. has is obviously to allow the free market to operate and remove all the regulations that are holding back the oil and gas sector. The U.S. is the largest oil consumer in the world, and regaining our energy independence should be our first focus. Now, should we continue to push OPEC, Iran, Venezuela to sell us more oil, or should we create more jobs in the U.S., build the U.S. economy, and produce our own energy? But whatever you do, don't let the central planners gaslight you about what caused rising prices. It's clear that Biden and his policies are leading to the soaring prices. Well, you guys let me know what you think the solution is. Leave me a comment down below how you think this can be solved. Of course, as always, give me a thumbs up on this video if you like it. And don't forget to check out marketdisruptorslive.com. There's a link down below. 15 of the top speakers in the world will let you know what is going to happen and what you should be doing to build, grow, and protect your wealth in the age of central bankers gone mad. And of course, also check out my new book, Uncommunist Manifesto. There's a link down below, uncommunist.com. Support it. It's in a Kickstarter phase. I'd love to have you help me spread these. Remember, lighting brush fires in the minds of men. We do that by sharing this information. I spent a lot of time to make this information, and you can just help by sharing it. Buy a couple extra books. They're cheap. Pass them out to your buddies. All right, that's what I got for you today. To your success, I'm out.